Welcome to Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 175. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. The call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. Computer Repair Podcast is brought to you by FreshBooks, a simple, pain-free invoicing solution for freelancers and small business owners. Try it free at freshbooks.com/Podnutz. And by Pulse Printing and Promotions. Get help with all your print and promotional needs. Go to pulseprintpromo.com. Use the offer code PODNUTS for a 5% discount on every order. All right, let me go ahead and introduce the co-hosts. We have Chris Carruthers from the Remote Support Tech team. He's still working on his video. How you doing, Chris?
Not bad. It's the camera actually this time, but it's all good. We'll be good next week, I promise.
One step at a time. Good to have you, man. And also we have today joining us, and I'm not sure if we can hear him, but we have Marvin Bee from MB Systems. How you doing, Marvin?
Holla, 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 holla. Can you hear that?
Yeah, we got you. Good to have you, man. All right. Let's go ahead and go into... Hey, Chris, why don't you go ahead and start off with your tip of the week?
Sure, yeah. So my tip of the week is a little convoluted, but it's important. Check every integration before deciding on a solution. The reason for that is because this week I actually ran into a very fun problem where I decided that when somebody orders something off of our website, I don't want to have to, double input everything. So we were setting up a WooCommerce integration with Repair Shopper, which I was very excited to see that they had all of that, just to find out that GoDaddy does not forward auth headers, which means that entire integration is not going to work, and I'm still going to have to make those invoices. So, if I had known that, I might have gone on a different route.
Gotcha. Okay. WooCommerce. So that's and explain to people what that actually does for you on your WordPress website.
Sure. Yeah. If you have a WordPress website, WooCommerce lets you create a store on your website. They have a bunch of different payment integrations, including PayPal and Stripe, which are the two payment options that we use. So it lets us contain everything in one place, and anything that involves a license with a license key, you can load all of your license keys into the system so that when someone buys something, it actually emails them the license and removes it from the inventory. So it's a pretty in-depth system if you take the time for it.
That's pretty cool. So if somebody was selling antivirus or something like that, they could sell it right from their website. The person can order it. They would get their key, their product key, to use that, the installation product key, to use that piece of software on their computer.
That's right, yeah. So what we're mainly going to be using that portion of everything for, because our antivirus is through the through our MSP, will be the Office 365 keys. So we'll be able to load 50 keys or however many keys we have on hand into the system, and whenever it gets emailed out, that key is removed so it doesn't get sent to a second person.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like a cool integration to me.
I think so.
All right. And it looks like we have a Robert Lavell from UpperCase Computer Solutions. How you doing, Robert?
Hey, doing pretty good. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you just fine.
Can you see my camera? I'm not seeing it on my end.
No, we don't see your camera. So
all right. We're not going to worry about it today then.
Nope.
That makes two of us.
We've got the two ghostly voices in the background. Chris and Rob will go back and forth. All right. Hey, Marvin, what tip do you have to share with us this week?
Well, I probably just want to do an update to the Windows 10 update that was happening to domain computers a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
I actually had a couple of calls of people that did the group policy update and went and looked for all the Microsoft KB updates that, Microsoft was hiding the Windows 10 inside of an IE11 security update. So they got all that. But one of the things that came up, and I had two different people call, was that they were looking in their group policy console and could not find the section to stop the Windows update, where there's actually a policy in the latest group policy control panel that you can stop Windows from upgrading to the latest version of Windows. And we found out that apparently it has to be the latest group policy console version 3, build 2600. And I guess if you weren't keeping up to date with the group group policy console that sometimes it doesn't automatically update. Now, group policy does come down as part of the Microsoft update, so if you're keeping your servers updated, it should be there. But apparently some people did not have that latest build. They were still on 6.2, and so that update option was not there. So Group Policy Console version 3, build 2600, and that will give you the policy setting under whatever it's computer, administrative tools, Windows Update, and the option is do not let Windows upgrade to the latest version, and that'll take care of the Windows 10 update notifications.
So they did address the problem then. Microsoft didn't just kind of leave it laying on the floor. They did address a problem for people that are on domains.
Yeah, and I think it just wasn't communicated properly. Obviously, the initial notifications on how to block it with the original KB article, but I don't know if it was intentional or just a mistake that they did not update everybody to say, oh, well, that update no longer exists. There's now 3 new updates that we're pushing out Windows 10 in. And that's where everybody freaked out. It was the week of March 8th is when that first started happening. A lot of people didn't see it till that Wednesday or Thursday, and it just snuck up on everybody.
Now, do you still did you still have the customers that said, I don't know how it happened, but somehow my computer just updated to Windows 10?
I have not had that, but I did have people that saw the notification.
Sure.
And they kind of panicked, like, oh, are we supposed to upgrade?
Right.
And I just had to tell them no.
Actually, can I interject into that for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was skeptical every single time I heard a customer say that, because how could that possibly just happen? There's absolutely no way that happened. But apparently, according to some of my clients, and then I wound up doing more research into it and found some articles about it online, the entire upgrade doesn't happen on its own. But what does wind up happening in some cases somehow, and nobody, including Microsoft, really seems to have a reason how it happened, is that some of these customers are restarting their computer and they have the Windows 10 installation, click here to agree to these terms window. And it's in the middle of the installation without any prompting ahead of time.
Well, and that's just, yeah. If you read actually through that stuff, though, what you'll see is you actually have to do the agreement. Yes, it does. It could pop up on a restart. You're correct, but the agreement is it's not in the middle of an install. It's actually the beginning of the install. So what's happening is, and I don't like this because it's a scummy marketing, but it pops up and it doesn't really give you a way. Hey, how do I get away from this? And what do most end users do when they come up on a computer that has a pop-up?
Yeah.
They just click whatever. They don't read it. They don't look at it. It's the same reason a lot of these pop-ups that we get on these computers, you'll look at why is the yes and no buttons switched around. And I can't tell you how many times I've done it. Because I'm clicking through things just trying to get rid of them. I was getting rid of something off of a computer yesterday. I was remoted in. I'm going to uninstall it. And I wasn't reading what it said because I'm being a typical end user, right? And I'm sitting there going, and I clicked it, and it never uninstalled. I did it 3 times. So I actually had to stop and look at it and go, I'm hitting the wrong button. I need to hit the right button to uninstall this. It's little tiny text that says, no thanks, I don't want this anymore. Click, but I'm hitting the button that says, it seems like it's going to uninstall, but it doesn't.
Yeah, that was a big thing with a lot of the malware. Those potentially unwanted programs.
Right.
And they phase it in such a way as that, are you sure you don't want to keep this? But and you're like, oh yes, because we're so used to hitting yes, 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 next, 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 and that's what they're doing. And the Windows Update is quite similar. It's embedded in the updates, and we've done such a good job of teaching our customers to accept the updates, and they're not going to take the time to read.
No. Right.
And they'll just call and say, my computer took an unusual long time to boot up this morning doing those updates. Well, that's Windows 10 installing in the background, and
they go, I don't know how it happened. Well, we know how it happened. I'm sorry. We'll fix this.
So that's the joy.
Well, at least now, have you had to do any rollbacks, or has anybody had to do any rollbacks on Windows 10?
Yes.
Okay. And from my understanding is it works most of the time. Is that true? Fair
I,
assessment?
I haven't had it not work, but I mean, here's the thing, right? If you have a user who, and none of my users don't do this because I've yelled at them, but if you have a user that uses like CCleaner and all of these, like there's nothing wrong with CCleaner, don't get me wrong, but if they're using all of these things to get rid of temporary files, a lot of the files that you need are getting picked up by some of these scans and deleted. So you can't do a rollback if you've deleted the data that you need for it.
That is something I didn't think of. You're right. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, definitely food for thought. All right, Mr. Rob, what kind of tip do you have for us this week?
I would say that I'm more of a business tip.
Cool.
I think that it's always good to kind of reach out to your competitors and to see if you truly are the best shop on the market. This last week, I think I did a lot of just kind of soul searching, making sure that I was doing everything right. We're doing a lot of entering the commercial market and doing a whole bunch of new commercial clients. And I kind of went outside of that and started looking at some of the commercial. I had never advertised as doing commercial. We've been doing commercial for years, but we'd never really gone full boat into actually taking care of those commercial clients. And so what I did was we're located in Medford, Oregon, and so what I did was I went out and I checked all the websites to see what commercial IT support was in Portland, and actually they're almost identical to us for what they're offering, but as far as how they were phrasing it and what they were offering to the end user and what they were showing the customer on their website was particularly different than ours. So we kind of wrote our own, kind of got an idea for what we're looking for, and we're kind of tooling our website to be more commercial. In addition to that, we're doing a lot of Internet of Things research. We found that there's a whole bunch of people that want to do home security systems and integrate with their businesses and stuff like that. And so I guess my tip would be, never sell yourself short. There's always a new thing you can add to your business, and keep an eye out for new prospects, I suppose.
Oh, that's a very good tip. And as far as the Internet of Things, are you finding that, are you going to have to, when you set up, whether it be whatever, it could be, between the thermostats and the doorbells and all the different things that you can actually use Internet of Things, are you seeing that you might have to separate those on a separate network outside of your normal network when it comes to businesses? Is that what you're finding out, or?
Yes and no. I mean, when I went and I'm kind of diving into the security side of things, there is a definite concern for encryption, because most of the Internet of Things devices, such as light switches and power outlets and stuff, run on what's called Zigbee or Z-Wave, and in most cases, both of those aren't encrypted, but there are brands that do encrypt door locks and window locks and things like that. So when you're looking for things that are going to allow people to enter the building, yes, the security probably should be segregated a little bit, but I mean, in most cases, unless you're going to put a server on an outlet or a mission critical machine on a light switch, then it's probably not that big of a concern that because hacking Internet of Things is a very, very real thing. Like, it was actually there was a huge conference done on it not too long ago. But the key things, such as locks and things that are important to your business, probably not a huge concern, because what's the worst case scenario? Someone drives by, gets into your network, and turns the heat down. You're not going to do much. Plus, the Zigbee and Z-Wave frequencies, they don't allow for much of a crosstalk as far as communicating. Like, you're not going to be able to hack into an automated system and then suddenly get domain controller access. Like, it doesn't. We're talking tiny little packets. I mean, little teeny bits of data. Enough to where a device can run on a watch battery for a year. And so it's not. We're not talking full throughput. It's actually their own kind of network. Now, the head unit or the hub that is controlling these Z-Wave devices, that of course could potentially be hacked. But at that point, what are you going to do? Again, turn some lights off. But we have noticed that is something to approach when you're talking to these clients. If they're wanting to do a door lock, you're going to want to kind of sway them in one direction or another of a brand. And instead of going with the $20 automated door lock, let's go with the $100 one. just on the off chance that there might be some high school student that knows how to hack that.
Yeah, I was listening to Steve Gibson over on Security Now, and basically they've been on and off talking about Internet of Things, and basically it's coming down to, it sounds like if you have physical access to whatever device, that you can actually get inside of the networks if it's on the same network. So I think one of the things he's proposing is that you separate it outside of the normal network, just like you would a separate. You have a guest network, you have your domain network, and then you have an outside network that would just be for the Internet of Things, so that they could communicate with the Internet update and all that kind of stuff, but it wouldn't actually be attached to the actual internal network.
Gotcha. Yeah, that does make sense. I haven't. I'm purchasing a ton of the equipment, the more advanced stuff, to put in my business before I fully roll out that whole model. So we'll be poking at it here pretty soon.
Cool. No, it sounds exciting. I know it's the way things are going, so we definitely need to embrace it and figure out how it works, so that we can help the people we're supporting out.
Absolutely.
Can we just acknowledge one thing though?
Go ahead, Chris.
As far as security is concerned, if you went to a Canadian's house and turned down their heat in the winter, that's actually a pretty big deal. So I'm just saying that maybe we should look into getting better security for this stuff.
Absolutely.
No, it's one of those things that you definitely don't want your stuff being messed with. There are, I'm sure there's things that could happen, but I think it's more about, yes, if the worst case scenario, if you hack into something and you turn my heat down, as long as you can't get into my network and get to my server and different things like that, I think that's the most important thing. You might have some frozen pipes or something, but it'll be all right. All right, my tip is actually a personal tip. I had some issues, and it probably started a couple weeks ago, and I basically had updated my NVIDIA driver for my video card on my primary machine, which I just built like not even a month ago, and did the update, and the update made my screen go all staticky and weird. So I did a little research online. I had to do a rollback, system restore twice, and what I found out was that sometimes with dual monitors, people were running into problems with this particular driver, and it was the 364.51 driver for NVIDIA. So, all right, no problem. I waited like a week and a half, and they had taken that driver down and put another one up. So I went and reinstalled it. I unplugged my second monitor. I actually uninstalled the NVIDIA drivers. I did a fresh install of the NVIDIA drivers with the GeForce Experience and all that kind of stuff. And it went in, worked fine. Problem was, I'm watching video online, whether through Netflix, Comcast, whatever, YouTube, didn't matter. I'm watching video, and about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe an hour and a half sometimes, all of a sudden both my screens would just blank out. Total black, can't see nothing. Computer's still running, but can't do anything, have no controls or anything. So I'm thinking, great. I said, which one of these components are going bad that I can't figure out, and I'm going to have to RMA them, tear my unit apart, and I just was like, I really don't want to do this. So after searching around online, I actually found a couple forums that were kind of dealing with similar problems, but I found one that basically said he would watch Netflix videos, about 45 minutes to an hour, his screens would blank out, and basically what he did was he rolled back to 362 NVIDIA driver and had no more problems. So a light bulb went off in my head, and I said, okay, when I started having this problem, what did I do that day? Oh, wait a minute. I installed the new driver. So I went back, put 362 on there, and have had no problems. The reason I bring that up is I have not had an NVIDIA driver problem in over 10 years. I just haven't. I've ran NVIDIA cards forever. And the reality is, because I didn't have a problem with something, I really wasn't looking at a driver as the solution. And sometimes it's the simple things, and you really got to take the time to step back and go, wait a minute, let me think about what was I doing that day, what did I install, what did I change? And for most of the time, it's nothing. I don't do anything, really. I don't change a whole lot of stuff on my computer. But this particular time, I updated a driver. So definitely look at those types of things. And if anybody has that problem out there, definitely go ahead and roll the drivers back. And I'll give one other side story too. The mixer I have uses FireWire. So the new computer I got, no motherboards have onboard FireWire anymore because nobody's really using it for anything. I need it because I can capture 16 channels using FireWire, which you can't with USB 2 or 3. So I bought a card, put it in my computer, same thing. I can't get the mixer to connect every time. So the first couple weeks I was having a problem. Didn't really matter. I could use it without having the control panel on my desktop. Not a big deal. But what I ended up doing is Microsoft actually has a FireWire legacy driver, which I had to download directly from Microsoft, install that, and it fixed my FireWire problem. It went away, works perfectly. So sometimes the simple solutions are something that we don't always look for. So definitely do that. All right. Let's take a quick break. Our show today is brought to you by FreshBooks. It is a simple cloud accounting solution designed for small business owners to painlessly send invoices, track time, and capture expenses. Save time for most computer repair shops. It's a very thing that always seems to be in short supply. Tons to do and never enough time to get it all done. Is that not the truth? The good news is our friends over at FreshBooks feel your pain and have created something to help you reclaim some of your precious time and be more productive. FreshBooks has created an amazingly simple invoicing solution for small business owners who need to focus on their work and not their paperwork. Oh, and the invoicing is only the beginning. FreshBooks keeps all your cash flow details in one place so you know exactly what invoices you sent, when you sent them, who paid you, and who owes you what. Their mobile app lets you take pictures of your receipts and organize them for later to make claiming expenses at tax time a breeze. It only takes about 30 seconds to create a really professional-looking invoice. FreshBooks can even show you whether or not a client has looked at the invoice you've emailed. You can call their helpful support line, and you'll get to speak to a human right away. No phone tree, no annoying pre-recorded messages. And when they told me that, I was like, sold, because I don't know about you guys, but I cannot stand calling a company and having to go through an annoying phone tree just to get to the operator that I wanted to get to. The best part is FreshBooks will definitely streamline how you manage this stuff on a day-to-day basis, but you'll also find that as tax time comes, you'll be so much more prepared and way less stressed. FreshBooks is offering you a free 30-day trial to try it out with no credit card required. Can't beat that. Go to freshbooks.com/podnuts and enter Podnuts in the How Did You Hear About Us section. We want to thank FreshBooks for sponsoring this episode of Podnuts, the Computer Repair Podcast. All right. Let's go ahead and go into a couple of emails. All right, this is from Michael Mary. It says, I am curious about how your panelists chose what networking hardware to use. I've been researching what to offer clients and keep flipping between several different models from D-Link, Netgear, HP, Cisco, OpenMesh, and Ubiquiti. I'm leaning towards Ubiquiti and OpenMesh, but I'm concerned that their support may be lacking, as I have read that Ubiquiti support mainly comes from other users in their forums. Yet I hear praise about them and a following that rivals Cisco Mariaki. Any insight you and your panel may provide would be great. Thanks for the show and all you do for the community. Well, thank you for the email, Michael. And how did you guys pick what networking hardware you sell to your clients? Anyone?
Well, some of it's trial and error. Some of it is dependent upon what type of work that you're doing. So in my case, when I started to support networks that needed to be managed better, stay up longer, I got away from anything that was considered a consumer grade product. So I went to all the business grade products, and of course, talking to my vendors, my distributors, other technicians, you basically get to a point where you have to find out what works for you. And based on what you do and the support that you're going to provide, there's so much that this Google generation is going to be able to figure out on their own because they can go and Google the same stuff we do. So in terms of where I got to where I am, and I spent a lot of time, I would find a product, I liked it, I just sticked with it just because I tried to standardize early.
Okay.
But as I needed more and more features, I would research and research and then move up, and then that would become my new next level of standardization. So depending on what you have, like for instance, switches. I have Netgear switches for most of my customers, but they either have to have a smart switch or a managed switch. And I'm using the HP ProCurve as my next step up from that for my more enterprise type clients. So my smaller businesses will get Netgear, the others go to HP ProCurve. For my Wi-Fi stuff, I used to use Netgear Wi-Fi routers all the time, but then I needed a technology where I had customers that needed multiple routers in multiple locations, and it was harder for me to have to go into each router to configure, a password change. I hated to have to go to 5 different routers to do that, so I went to the mesh. And right now I'm using OpenMesh because OpenMesh, at least for me, was the easiest with having a cloud controller that I didn't have to put a physical machine somewhere. There's no annual subscription, which Meraki does. I'm not sure if Ubiquiti does. The Ruckus, which is the Cadillac of Wi-Fi routers, is something I'm looking into, but probably won't happen for a while. But I do my stuff now based on the tools that I have. I need to have tools that work with all my Fluke products. So that's how I base a lot of my stuff on. So you have to kind of find out, how you're going to support your customers. What do your customers need? Do your customers, if they're residential and small businesses, well, they're not going to need all the high-end business class stuff. Some of them might, but you have to find that balance as to what do your customers need, what do you want to standardize on, what do you feel comfortable with, and just basically up your step as you move forward. If you get a bigger client, then start researching the bigger, business type products.
Now, the Netgear stuff, are you using like business class Netgear, or is that just the regular consumer product?
No, I'm using the business, like the ProSafe series for my Netgear switches.
Okay.
So.
Very good.
And they have to be managed for me. So they have to be. There is the smart managed, which is kind of like the in-between level, because you have your dumb switches. Anybody can pretty much do that. And to me, it's not that they're consumer or business grade, but they don't give me a lot of the networking functions in terms of I can't see traffic. I can't tell which ports are active. I can't tell a lot of that stuff, by going into a web console to do that. If I plug my Fluke tool into a dumb switch, it tells me nothing. With a managed switch, my Fluke, I can tell which ports are active. I can tell which ports are producing the most traffic. I can tell which ones have errors on them. I can tell which devices are connected to which ports. So that's how I started basing my purchases for my switches, my routers, all of that stuff, based on what my Fluke will tell me. So I've used a bunch of switches, Netgear, TP-Link, all of the Linksys, all of those switches. But now I've found a range of switches in the Netgear class that I like, and the HP ProCurves that I like. And same with routers. A lot of the routers are similar. You just have to find one that you like that gives all the features that you need, and just, for the most part, stick with it until it doesn't work anymore. As soon as you have a customer complain or have an issue, then if it turns out to be the product, look for another product that does the same stuff with with better features, better support. I guess is something that he mentioned in there.
Right.
I don't like to get products where all of the support comes from a forum, because I don't know who those people are in the forums. Some of them are techs, some of them are good techs, some of them are just hobbyists. Some of them have no clue how to run networks in the way that I need networks run. So my products come from talking to my vendors, my distributors, other techs who do what I do, and that's how I gauge my stuff.
Now let me ask you a question on the HP ProCurve and the Netgear switches.
Right.
Is there a big price difference that you can standardize everything to the HP line? I mean, is it big enough to where a lot of people go, no, that's just way too much money?
There is a price difference, and it depends on, like I said, within each class of products, you're going to have your low-end business class and then your high-end business class. A lot of the low-end business class, you could probably get customers to do every time.
Okay.
If they understand what it is you're trying to do. That you can't just walk into a business who, have never had any knowledge of switches, and they're used to touch just buying the the $50 switch down at the box store. Come in and say, okay, I'm going to put you on this $350 switch. They're going to be like, what? Are you kidding me? So I have to show them, and I pull out my Fluke and I say, here's what I can do with this switch as opposed to this switch. And I have to tell them what the value is. And the value a lot of times is I can troubleshoot problems in, say, half the time, a quarter of the time, if I can just simply plug this device into your network, and it's going to give me a nice overview picture of your network.
Right.
And if your business, is dependent on staying up, and downtime means something to you, then you want me to troubleshoot your network faster. You want me to be able to look at your network, and for the customers that are on a managed service plan or a maintenance agreement, if it's every week, every month, in some cases every day, if I can just simply pull up something on the network where I can just go in and look and see if there are problems starting to occur on a managed switch as opposed to a dumb switch, well, I can tell them ahead of time, okay, there's a lot of traffic on this port, and it's spewing out errors. We need to figure out what that is. And a lot of times, solving that problem before it becomes a major issue is worth it for that extra couple $100.
Right. That's good. That's real good. All right, Rob, what about you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I use the Ubiquiti products daily.
Okay.
Absolutely love them. I reached out to them. Actually, I'm doing some partnership stuff with them. It's kind of hard for me to agree and disagree. I mean, the big stuff, like the Cisco stuff, I did so much Cisco stuff when I started up, and even my phone system, my IP phone system, there's no support for that. I mean, we're talking the biggest networking company in the world, and every time I call them, it's, yeah, go ahead and check your forms. We don't know what you're talking about. We produced that product, but yeah, I don't know what to help you with. I mean, we're talking. I'm not talking like $100 items. I'm talking like $2,500, $5,000 switches, and you're still not getting support.
Right. Okay.
And so it's kind of here nor there depending on how you want to look at your support. I noticed that a lot of the bigger companies are switching to form support because they just. I think it's a cost issue. If Cisco isn't going to get, I mean, if I'm not paying Cisco $10,000 a month, they're not even going to talk to me. And so that's my issue with Cisco. I've gotten a little burnt by Cisco because I've got clients that have hardware down, they have service agreements with Cisco, and the only thing that service agreement, I mean, they pay hundreds of dollars a month, and the only thing that they're promised is an email response. I mean, it's stuff like that that kind of like gets me irritated with some of that stuff. Now, sure. Ubiquiti, as far as the forum support, there are a few things that you should be aware of. I've been using Ubiquiti for almost 4 years now. Their products are, I swear, they're engineered by aliens. They work so well all the time. I mean, we've done. If you look at some of the range on them, like the Rocket M2s and the Loco M2s and the new 5 gigahertz stuff, we're talking 17 miles. Like, you can beam wireless internet connection. You can get into the air fiber, 1.2 gigabit over wireless for 5 miles with no degradation. Like, absolutely insane stuff. The little access points that we put in, and this is a true story. I'm going to tell you a true story. We went and we put one in it was an old parking garage. It's a company we have locally here that does estate sales. And we go out there, and he goes, yeah, I can't get wireless anywhere, but I've got an office upstairs. So they gave us the whole building. They gave us the bottom, but no one's going to rent the upstairs, so they just gave us the upstairs for free. I said, okay, that's cool. So we go up there, and he goes, yeah, I ran this Cat5 cable up here for you. He goes, man, that took about 3 hours. And I looked at him like, what are you, a monkey? Like, how did that take you 3 hours? He goes, well, I had to drill through 16 inches of concrete. See the hole? And I looked down this hole, and it's legitimately 16 inches of concrete that he ran this Cat5 cable through. And he's like, but it doesn't matter, I just need Wi-Fi up here in my office. I said, okay, cool. So we hook up the disc or the little access point, and he goes, hey, cool, it's rock solid, everything's good, and he leaves. Come to find out, about 6 months later, he calls us back out and goes, yeah, I'm not getting Wi-Fi at the far end of my building. Now, this is a parking garage, so that's like 2,000 feet away, okay? Like, okay, that's understandable with all the concrete and whatnot. He goes, but downstairs it works great. All my point of sales are on it. All my cell phones work. I went, are you sure? He goes, yeah, it works great. It's the far end downstairs that doesn't hit. And I went, so that thing is penetrating 16 inches of concrete and working flawlessly for you. He goes, yeah, I've never rebooted it. It works great. And I went, okay. So we go out there and I check the network. Sure enough, it's full signal, the whole 9. I'm like, I don't know how that's physically possible because science doesn't work that way. But, you know, whatever, I can vouch for it. We've had a separate instance where a lady was complaining that her wireless wasn't working and it was penetrating her house, going through her garage, going through a fifth wheel, which is a giant metal box, and still able to hop on Xbox Live with about 10 meg down. So I can vouch for their products. Just absolutely 100% have had nothing but absolute perfect networks with those. The only thing I don't like about them, and this is just a pet peeve, when you go to configure them, they do require you to download what used to be a Java applet that would run on the machine, and that's how you would communicate with the device. They since have gotten rid of that. Now, the problem with the controller that I've noticed is if you deploy a lot of them, like we're deploying probably 10 of them a week, like we deploy them everywhere. When you're deploying a lot of them, the network controller has to be uninstalled and reinstalled for it to find the device. So when you first initialize it, you've got to go into the add remove programs, uninstall their software, reinstall it. Now, one of my other techs who's deploying it, he goes, no, it doesn't work that way for me. So it could just be a fluke issue with me. But I tend to think that that's not true since I have like 3 different laptops that I'm doing that with. So that's my only pet peeve. Now, as far as support goes, yes, it is mostly form support. They do respond to emails pretty well. But as far as wireless goes, Ubiquiti has got some crazy stuff. If you look at we're part of their newsletter. They have, I think it's called Sunbeam or something like that, but they're completely standardizing solar tech now, where it all snaps together and it's all plug and play and it's cloud managed. As far as their subscriptions go, though, they don't have a subscription model. They have a controller that you put on your network, so it's kind of like a little 5-port controller. Costs a couple $100, and then that does your in and outs. Obviously, Open Mesh is probably a better idea for that. But as far as managed switches and stuff goes, I have to completely agree with Marvin. I mean, there's been so many times that I've gone into a company and they're using, some plastic TP link to run, 20 workstations and a server and all this stuff, and it's 10100, and you're like, you need like a $300 switch here, and they're like, what are you talking about? And you're like, okay, this is what I can do, and so I have to completely agree. You've got to kind of judge yourself. And as far as picking a product, he hit it right on the head. Exactly. I mean, you've got to find where your customers are and keep stepping yourself up. I started with Sonic Walls as far as routers go. Then I went to Fortinet, and I love the build quality of Fortinet. Like they're like the Apple, hardware. It's just beautiful. It's metal and it feels industrial. I don't like a lot of the ways that things are phrased inside of them, and I also don't like the fact that a lot of them are forcing their users to buy UTM or subscriptions just to use hardware they've already purchased. Like, that really irritates me, and especially when you're pitching that to a customer. Okay, I need to sell you a $500 router. Cool, okay, I understand that that's going to bite, and it's also $250 a year to use hardware you bought. And so it's hard to pitch them on that. So I ended up settling finally once all the dust settled and I got done dealing with all that. I settled on Zycel. Zycel is one that people don't typically use too much, but I noticed that it doesn't force its users to do UTM. It does VPN pass-through, policy control. It does all of that stuff. But you also have to understand, especially if you're trying to pick one of these, if you're going to go Cisco and then switch to Zycel, or you're going to go Zycel to SonicWall, you're going to want to pick one to be your bread and butter, because the terminology amongst all of these are slightly different, and they just make your head melt when you're trying to understand how these policies work and how they relate to each other and how zone control works and all this stuff. Because Cisco is absolutely I don't know the word to say, but they try to name everything their own way. Like they spin things that isn't industry standard as far as naming things, and then you end up on a SonicWall and you're like, what does that even mean? I don't get it. And so if you are going to pick some enterprise level hardware, which by the way is the route to go, once you go enterprise, you don't go back. Once you get there, pick a brand that you know can do 99% of what you can do or what you're going to need, and become very familiar. For us, when we find a brand that's rock solid and we use it for about 6 months, we make sure that it's going to work in all those different scenarios, and then we reach out to that company when it's not, hectic 911 time, and we ask them, hey, do you have a training trading portal? Do you have partnerships? Is there? And when you ask for partnership, they usually give you like a local rep. Like with Ubiquiti and Shadow Control, we actually got the cell phone number for these reps. So if we have an issue, we just reach out and say, hey, how do we handle this? And so sometimes that's a good way to get around the whole forum support thing, because if you tell the company, hey, I'm going to be pushing your products, they tend to help you out a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, I'm getting feedback from somebody who's got their speakers on. Okay, Chris, how about you?
Yeah.
Do you do much networking anymore?
Well, I do, but not to the scale that these guys are, and this is why. The city that I am in doesn't have 20 workstation businesses for the most part. Barrie, Ontario is actually a huge small business center. So you're looking at 3, 4, maybe 5 workstations that almost every company in town uses. So a lot of the times they will refuse to put that kind of money into it. They'll just use, the all-in-one that's provided to them for their small business account for the internet. That said, with the size of businesses that I deal with, that doesn't usually wind up being a problem. And if it does, we're looking at maybe adding a Cisco, a secondary Cisco wireless access point for a repeater, just to extend the Wi-Fi. So not the best person to really ask those questions to, because it's usually already set up before I even walk in.
Gotcha. And I think the main thing too is, and you guys really hit on this point, is that people, it's best to learn one, and I think that's what Michael was getting at, was he's trying to figure out what's going to work for him and what he needs to learn for his business, because Rob, like you said, it's just ridiculous how everybody has this terminology and none of them are the same. So you'll be all over the place trying to figure out, well, what does that really mean? What if I click this? What's that going to do? So those are great points, and I totally agree with these guys.
And let me interject there real quick. It's very important as far as a security standpoint goes, because some of these things, like yesterday, I was setting up a Zycel to do VPN pass-through and stuff like that. And I was watching a little tutorial video from their website, because I hadn't done it from one device to the other or something. I can't remember. It was a security policy. And one of the little notes said, make sure you don't click this button, because that allows, and it was something convoluted. It was like aggressive pass-through, blah, 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 blah. And they specifically mentioned that in the video, because they apparently that allows for all of your VLANs and then a bunch of other network communication to talk to each other. And so it's very important to kind of become completely involved in these different companies, because once you learn that system and you get it completely immersed in it, you'll understand what all of these different policies mean. And doing something as simple as unchecking a box or checking a box could completely open up your network and create devastation. So be aware that something as simple as that can cause you some pretty big problems.
Very good. Very good. All right, yeah, I think we'll leave that one there, and a lot of good information. All right, email number 2. This one says, "Hi Jeff and gang, I discovered Podnutz a few weeks ago and have been catching up on your show since then. I've been meaning to write in for a while. I've been a low-profile blogger for a number of years now, so I can attest to what you previously said about all emails and notes of encouragement being appreciated. But I finally got the impetus while listening to episode 170 this morning. I'll try not to write a novel here, but a little background on myself first. A little over a year ago, I decided I needed to reset my career and I wanted to go into IT. A friend of mine had been encouraging me for a while, and I've always enjoyed computers as a hobby. I built my first PC a few years back and have dabbled in some basic coding. So I've studied some CompTIA A+ materials, pursued and achieved a Network Plus cert, and last summer I was hired for my first entry-level IT job." Awesome.
Ooh.
There are a lot of upsides to working where I am now. I'm still learning a lot. I like many of the people I work with, and my boss and senior IT colleague are easy to work for and very encouraging. Our organization is a nonprofit and manages about 100 machines split between two offices, and our IT staff is comprised of me, my senior colleague, my boss, and outside consultants. I'm pretty busy most days, and I like it like that. Sounds like a song. This brings me to episode number 170. Marvin was talking about an experience he had involving a networked copier that wasn't assigned a static IP, and how a junior tech spent 2 days trying to fix the issue that he was able to resolve in minutes. He talked about how employees shouldn't essentially rob the company of productivity. I don't disagree with them, and I totally understand why an organization would prefer to hire consultants to handle certain functions or to troubleshoot issues that an in-house staff can't quickly fix. On the other hand, though, I'd like to turn the question back to Marvin and you all, especially anyone who might have employees. To what degree do you value teaching your techs? My boss, for example, says that he encourages us to try to figure out how to solve the problem on our own before we elevate them. This should only apply up to a point and should depend on the urgency of the problem, of course. But for a low-level techie like me, who wants to learn as much as I can and climb the ranks, how else are we supposed to learn, and how much should an employer accommodate? Thanks for your time and for continuing to put out the awesome podcasts. And he did not want me to mention his name, so I won't. Definitely appreciate that, the email. And so, Marvin, you remember this conversation we had back on 170?
Well, since he called me out by name, I better remember it. Yes, I do. And let me first say that his question actually has multiple layers, because I think the answer is, going to be different depending on the tech, depending on the company, and based on whether it's a tech that works for me or is subcontracted by me versus a tech who, there's nothing, in terms of relationship between us. Now, in the particular case that I spoke about, this was a tech who was hired by the company, who is basically a help desk technician. And I'm kind of the network administrator for them, even though I'm not there full time. But anything that is server related, network related, I'm supposed to be brought in, from the beginning, so that there's no issues. The technician does want to grow and does want to be a network administrator at some point, but that company has given him explicit instructions not to mess with anything on the network. It's a big company, and they don't want him experimenting on their live network. Now, part of that came from the fact that he used to experiment on their network and would break things. And, of course, call me, to come fix it, and it's always an emergency at that point. And, part of it was a billing issue, because I'm like, look, if I got to come in after him, I'm going to charge you my advanced networking rate. Even if it's a little simple thing, because, well, if he couldn't do it, it must be advanced, right?
Right.
So this is an isolated case, and this is a situation where, for that technician, I do not offer any help to him unless he specifically comes to me ahead of time and says, hey, I'm trying to do this, can you help me, walk me through it? And in those cases, then I will do it. But if I'm being called in to fix something, I don't tell them how I fix it. And the reason is just I don't want him to go back and try to see if he can figure it out or reverse engineer the learning so that he can go do something else. Now, that's just particular to that customer. So if it comes to other scenarios, for instance, when I had technicians and I sent them out, of course I wanted them to learn as much as they could. A lot of it I wanted them to learn on their, timetable, and for them to go out and learn, not just by me, hey, here's a checklist, here's how you do this, go do it. I wanted them to learn and experience, the joys and pitfalls of fixing things. So the way that I did it was I would have a timetable in my head of how long it took to fix certain problems. Now, for me, if it took me, 10 minutes to half an hour to fix a problem, well, I would give them, say, 1 to 2 hours to fix that same problem. And if they hadn't fixed it by that time, then it's either me calling them to say, hey, what's taking so long? Or I would expect for them to call me and say, hey, look, I've been working on this for 2 hours. I think I probably need help. And in that case, that's a great relationship where, a senior technician can talk to a junior technician and, walk you through the steps on that. So I think what's happening, though, is in this, I'm going to use this term again, this Google generation, a lot of people, including, techs just learning, are basically thinking that they don't need us, us old guys.
Experienced guys.
Well,
no. Let's just call it what it is, Jeff.
I'm just saying, from people like Chris, for the people out there, Jeff and I, we're much older than we look. I mean, we're in pretty good shape, pretty good. But yes, from our experience, from Chris's end, old. They just don't. They think we're holding them back, and they don't need us. They can learn everything they need to learn. So it's a give and take, I think. There are a lot of techs that, from our generation who are information hoarders, who we don't want to teach anybody else anything because, job security, or we want to be seen as the smart guy or whatever. But, I take that, like I said, case by case. It depends on the tech. It depends on the customer. Some customers, I don't want them touching anything.
Yeah.
Because, because they're going to break everything. And I don't have customers that are constantly asking me, hey, can you show me how to do that so I don't call you again? And I'm like,
right.
No. In that case, I'll fix this, I'll leave, here's a number to call somebody else. And it's a weird little deal because I know that technicians in our own communities, there's a lot of technicians that really, are free to share everything and don't mind giving all that information to customers. But I think a lot of times when you're dealing with a certain level of customer, you don't want them learning too much to the point where they're calling you for an emergency all the time. And that's the only reason they're calling you. Because our jobs really should be to help manage their IT needs and help work with them and do things the right way and set things up the right way. And in situations where the technicians that are on site or junior, if they're willing to work with you and at least respect you to a certain degree, then it's going to work out okay. But if there's no good relationship between the technicians, then it's just not going to work. So so in terms of I think Podnutz and these podcasts are probably the great equalizer where here we are giving out our knowledge and information to other technicians. I'm just not going to give it to every tech that I run into in the field, and that's where I think the balance has to be had. Now, some of it is going to be that, yes, I think a lot of the older technicians are looking at it from a standpoint of, well, if I teach you how to do it and you're not going to call me, how am I going to make my money?
Right.
And that to some degree, that's a legitimate concern, but it's also a concern from a MSP standpoint, where the services that I'm offering you in terms of hosting your email or managing your mail servers, those are going to go away too. It's going to be too easy for a customer to call up Microsoft and get Office 365. They don't need us for all of that stuff. So it's going to be a huge circle here for the next few years.
I disagree. Have you tried to deal with Microsoft support for Office 365?
Well, there will be those points where the people that are doing it and taking care of migrations and fixing migration problems, but there will be a certain point where, once you fix a migration or do a migration, a lot of that support is done. Until they have the next problem.
Until there's a server-side problem that winds up being 3.5 hours on the phone with Microsoft, if you know what it is that you're talking about. No, I'm sorry. Support for that is not going to go away anytime soon, and that's the reason why companies like AppRiver exist. Right? The only reason why they exist is because when that happens, they're willing to deal with it.
True, but my customers, if they're calling AppRiver and they're not calling me, That's still that gap. So now
You're right.
I'm still getting something from AppRiver because I'm referring their products or reselling their products. So,
Yeah.
for techs like us that are doing that, it works out great. But for techs that aren't doing that and aren't getting, their deals through AppRiver, they're losing that opportunity unless unless their customers are calling them first. But the customers, half my customers can call AppRiver, and I don't mind that because I don't want to spend 3 hours on the phone to
Nope.
solve a problem because the customer's not going to want to be billed, $300.
3 hours.
Yeah.
For you being on the phone, right? Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Although to be fair, as one of those young people that you keep on putting down in this Google generation, first off, if I look as good as that when I'm your age, I'm not going to be complaining. Okay, but secondly, you're right. There are technicians out there, and let's face it, because it's one of the things that we have to deal with in business. There are technicians out there that really are just good at Googling things, and simple fixes can be done because it can be found online. But I think that people like me, and I'm going to use the word successful because there's just no other way of putting it down there. Anybody who's successful in this business that can actually do it as a full-time thing for an extended period of time, and I'm talking about years. You can't do that just by teaching yourself. You can't do that by just relying on yourself. You have to rely on people that are more experienced than you. And I will never pretend to be the expert on everything. I mean, I'm sure there are some things that I'm really good at. That's the only reason why I'm in business. But the reason why I have that knowledge is because I went to school and I was taught by somebody who did it for a very long time. If I run into a Microsoft Server problem, like a Windows Server problem that I don't know the answer to, I'm not just going to Google it. I'm going to text my buddy Frank because he's been dealing with Windows servers for decades, and he generally will be able to teach me what it is that I need to know to be able to fix it. I pay him for that time, and he's very happy to do that because he doesn't like talking to customers. So there needs to be this balance, and anybody who's in their 20s that's coming into this business and thinking, yeah, I'm just going to be able to do this by Googling it. No, find yourself a mentor because I guarantee you're going to need one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Rob, what about you? You've got obviously you've got employees at your shop, and so how if I think we've talked about this before, but how do you encourage and help those employees grow in your business?
Well, I mean, the thing about me is I'm obsessed with business and productivity. I'm more obsessed with how businesses are ran and things like that than I am more about computers. So for me, I'm more interested in the interworkings of how different industries work and stuff like that. So for like us, I go to like the next level of that. So you're always in that situation, and I have this with our store manager all the time. It's just like an ongoing issue where he learns how to do something and it takes him 3 hours, and I said, well, you're not going to bill them for 3 hours because it's a flat rate job that you're doing. Maybe you should have, waited and moved that to a different time when we weren't so busy and stuff like that. And that's just an ongoing thing that we have. But every time he comes back with it took me 3 hours this time, but it'll take me 15 minutes next time. The problem with that argument is that with IT support, that is an indefinite, that's a never-ending rabbit hole you're falling down, because every day that changes, every time you do that project that changes. So you have to, for me specifically, I went as far as getting little egg timers, right? Just so that we kind of have a little I don't like being a dictator in my company. I like giving them the freedom to learn and to grow and stuff like that. But at the same time, profitability is important, right? So you can't have there was one last week that I just wasn't super happy with. It was like a 5.5-hour job to fix something for I think like $170 payout. It was silly when he could have been working on 15 other repairs, and it wasn't like anyone got reprimanded or anything. He did it for the right reasons. He just should have done it at a different time. Now, what I'll typically do is I'll notice someone doing something for an excessive amount of time, and it is important for your technicians to take the time and learn and adventure, because that's how they become great technicians, because most of the time if they're on the clock, they're not going to do that stuff at home. They're going to go home, they're going to de-stress, they're going to relax. They're not going to sit at home and play with servers and build spool VMs and stuff like I do in the evenings for fun.
Alrighty then.
I do though. Like me and my.
I believe it, Rob. I believe it. It cracks me up. But
So
I
I
get it.
typically like something like that'll come up, and I'll notice that they're doing it, and I'll say, hey, why don't we turn an egg timer on? With this thing buzzes, you're going to have to walk away. And I find myself doing the same thing. We picked up a new client, another city away, and it was a driver issue, and I know that I'm better than a stupid driver, and I was there for 15 minutes, and she said, well, we're getting close to closing. Do you want to try to get this other thing done? I went 5 more minutes, and that turned into another 10 minutes, and you've got to know when to step away and when to realize, hey, this is not something you're going to realistically fix in 10 or 15 minutes. And so for me, it's a profitability per time thing. But as far as the staff goes, if a staff member, there's a couple things that we offer. So, like, I pay for a subscription for IT Pro TV. The techs can watch that all day long if they want. We've got LCD screens around the shop. They can throw up Twitch, or they can throw up that and watch it in the background. We kind of create that comfortable environment so they don't feel like they're drones, and they're not forced to do everything. So we tend to have a very good atmosphere, but at the same time, I encourage them. I basically offer them. I said, hey, I have IT Pro TV. You can start at the absolute basics, an A+, and work your way all the way up into the CCNAs. I, as a company, will pay you to take the test. So I will pay your time to take the test. I will pay for the test, and I will drive you, because we don't have a close testing office. I will drive you there paid to take the test, and if you pass the test, I'll give you a raise. Because ultimately, that employee, for them to get a Net Plus or a CCNA, is going to turn them into a rock star for me, and then I can stop doing the crazy, over-the-top networking projects that I have to do. So I approach it a little bit differently. I like to invest in my employees as far as making them smarter. Like Chris, the tech that's under me, basically my assistant, I offer him those things, and I said, hey, if there's any time where you want to learn more, I will take an entire weekend and I will sit down with you and I will train you on this. But then the flip side of that comes where it's, oh, well, I kind of want to spend time with my family. I don't want to be working on computers all the time. And so that's why we incentivize it and say, hey, if you do this in your free time, I'll pay for it and I'll give you a raise. So there's that, but you've also got to. I mean, the hard part, I guess, it's per business. I mean, if you've got a business where most of it is end user support, the end users are probably okay with waiting a little bit longer to get something done. Enterprise stuff, I mean, when you're talking break fix, that's by the time they call you, it's 2 hours too late. So it's different. You can't have, like, a lot of the jobs. Like, there was one for a rehabilitation clinic that Chris was called out on, and he said, he came to me, he said, hey, I think this is a little over my head, can you come with just to supervise? And sure enough, it was massively over his head, but he did the right call by asking and not going there breaking a bunch of stuff or trying to fix it, spending 8 hours, billing them for 9, all of the stuff. We were in and out of there in 2.5 hours. And so, but during that whole process, as I'm doing these things, I'm explaining why I'm doing them. And so, like, before we, disconnected their domain controller and stuff, I asked them a bunch of questions, and Chris kind of looks at me like, why are you asking that? And it's because they have a phone system, and they have, an alarm system and a fire system, and they've got this and they've got that. And I'm explaining these things in front of the customer as I'm explaining to him, so that both the customer understands that, one, I know what I'm talking about, and two, Chris is picking up on why we're asking those questions. So I'm kind of training as I'm going, and so it's kind of double dipping. It's getting the job done quicker, but also teaching him a little. Now, he's probably going to retain maybe 20% of what I said because we're just flying through it, right? We've got to finish a job. But the next time, he's going to pick up a little more, and he's one of those techs that picks up stuff over and over again. And so I noticed that once he actually called me yesterday while I was on site, and he said, hey, I've got this computer, it's not getting on the network, there's no domain controller, what's going on? It's got a static IP, but I tried a different static IP, is it an XP problem, is it this, is it that? And he's actually running through the scenario that we had just gone through at that previous on-site, showing me that he's at least picking up on it. So as the months progress and I'm investing in him, that time starts to reduce until he gets to that point. So I think it depends mostly on the business. How much money do you want to lose training a tech, but how much are you going to save once that tech knows his stuff?
Yeah, all great points.
Now, can I say one thing with that? First off, I think that the way that I know I'm going to say it no matter what. Actually, I think the way that you're approaching training and approaching the certifications and the raises and all that. We all know what my opinions are on certifications, but The fact that you're training them and giving them the knowledges that they need to get those certifications and then rewarding them for taking that time to do it, I think is a fantastic way of approaching it. And for IT Pro TV, I haven't finished my full assessment of it yet. I'm actually going through the videos and going through the training to see what my overall opinion is on that. So far, it's looked pretty good. So, the fact that you're putting the money down and doing that is great for a company your size. What do you think about these smaller companies? What do you think about, somebody who's bringing on their first tech? Do you think that it's really... do you think that it could be done a lot of the same way that you're doing when it's just the tech and the owner?
Well, can I jump in and answer that?
Go for it.
Only because I went through that for a lot of years where, it was just me and one tech or two techs. But I did a lot of the same stuff that Rob is saying, where you find a way to incentivize, whatever that word is.
Incentivize.
Yeah.
You should try specifically.
Let me get
we're not wordsmiths. We're IT support people.
Well,
that's right.
We have dentures we have to, move around. But, from a standpoint of if they're your own techs, you have to treat it completely different than I would the on-site techs that I deal with now. So when I had my techs, and, like I said, I went through periods where when I first hired my first couple of techs, it took some trial and error, because a lot of times it is based on the individual. Some techs love to learn, some don't. Some learn by video, some learn by watching, some learn, so you have to figure out a way to utilize all the tools. But, making it easy for them to learn is something that I do agree with for when I, had my techs. And I did the same thing. I would reward them for, taking the exam and, try to give them a raise based on the exam that they took and how much more they could help my business. And I know, Chris, you mentioned about the certifications. From my perspective, I am big on certifications because my businesses show value in the certifications. When I can go to my customer and say, we're Microsoft certified, we're an HP partner, we're a Sonic Wall partner, those things mean stuff to the businesses that I work with. Not the case for a lot of businesses. Not all businesses care. They just know, can you get the job done and how much you're going to charge me?
Yeah.
So you still have to gauge that out. But in terms of for techs that are bringing on their first, their first additional tech, maybe they can't do everything right away. Maybe they can't, afford to reward them for passing the exam or giving them a raise immediately. But if you're in that business where you're going to be hiring techs, you need to start planning for that. You've got to plan on your techs are going to expect, a raise every year, whether they're good or not. That's just the way employees are.
There's a really important thing to be noted there. If they could go out and learn all the information themselves, they would be doing your job.
Right.
That is the important thing. Most of these people have an interest in tech. Chris, the guy that was that's basically my assistant, didn't know anything about networking and now absolutely loves it. Now, am I going to be able to write a curriculum to actually show him all these different scenarios? And now I agree with both sides of it. Chris, your distaste to certificates or to certs and stuff like that, I can completely agree with, because the stuff that I'm going to learn in an A+ or a .NET right now is going to do me nothing, and nor is it going to help me sell my business. Now, as far as my techs knowing that information and knowing those little intricate things about how they relate to each other, which I have no idea how to teach, is something that I do appreciate from the certifications and stuff like that. So I agree with one side and I agree with the other as far as, yes, I think certifications are pretty much useless. No one mentions it, no one says anything about them. Marvin's point, if I can put that on my website and say that we're Microsoft certified and we're .NET, yeah, obviously that's going to make your company some more money, because they're going to say, hey, these guys know their stuff. At the very least, they at least took the time to look at the curriculum. On the opposite side of it, I don't personally need any of that, but I'm also being probably kind of smug about it. my techs, though, if my techs had that, it would give me a little bit of a reassurance, knowing that, okay, if I'm going to send them to a business and that business has got a whole, network rack and everything set up, at least they'll understand at the very least what they're looking at and can decide whether or not to jump in and say, okay, this is something that I can do. I understand. When you guys go on site, I'm sure you see these things, and I don't know, like Chris, you don't do a ton of enterprise, but like if I walk into like a Hilton or a Marriott and I walk into their back room and I see 5 racks and they're full of servers, the first thing I do is go, oh, what did I just get into? And then I slow down a little bit and I go, okay, so let's look at the devices. And then I just kind of, once over them, okay, well, that's your domain controller, that's your router, that's your switch. Okay, it's not that bad. But my knowledge gave me the ability to go in and do that. Now, if I had a technician that went through a curriculum that at first glance goes, you know what, this is no big deal, that's going to make me feel a lot better. So I kind of agree with both sides of that. I think it's important to have the certs in some situations, but when I walk into a new client, I never tell them that I'm certified. I never tell them, oh, my company's got this or that, because they don't care. They typically are like, are you confident? Can you do this job? And that's the other side of that. So I think you got to kind of weigh both sides.
Very good. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of good information. As a matter of fact, we went so long that I don't know that we're going to get into our actual main topic today, because we'll probably have to save that for next time. But, yeah, a lot of good information, and I hope that this helps some people out. I'll give one little short story, and this comes from the learning aspect as a technician, as you're just coming up through the business, so you're not just going to Google to search for everything, which I don't find that easy anymore, to be honest with you. To find the problems that I need to find, I usually find a portion on Google that will point me in a different direction, and all it really does is it reframes my mind in a different direction. Because a lot of times we get these blinders on and we're just going and going and going, and we don't know, wait a minute, let me think outside the box a little bit. So what I'll do is sometimes when there's an intricate problem, I'll go on Google and it'll refocus me, points me in a different direction. I still have to figure it out myself. And that's what's happening a lot of times. So I don't think Google is, especially as more information is put out there, I don't think it's that easy to find solutions to a lot of these problems. And the people that are, like you have the person that works in the shop, that's kind of they work there, but they are the IT support also. They usually screw things up, and that's when they call us. So I'm not personally too concerned about that, but time will tell. We'll see. But as far as learning, I just got I work for Ford Motor Company, as a lot of people know, and I just got moved to a press line where I operate a press that's like tons and tons of weight. I have to use an overhead crane and move big rolls of steel back and forth, move dies in and out, and I've got to do all these things on the press to basically move dies in and out and to run the press. And when I first went back there, they told me it was going to be a 4-month process for me to actually just get the basics down and be able to do this job. Well, maybe for some people it would be. For me, I've always been the type of person that I will stand behind you and look, even if I'm down here doing one side of the job, when we're doing another side of the job, I'll run up there and I'll look and I'll ask questions. I'll say, hey, I don't mean to be annoying. I apologize, but I want to learn, so can you guys kind of walk me through what you're doing? And I watch them, and then they'll start having me do things. Well, bottom line comes is this 4-month job, this 4-month learning process, took me about a little over 3 weeks to actually learn from front to back all the basics. Now, there's all kinds of things that you'll run into over time that I have not seen yet. And these guys have been doing such a great job where they wanted to teach me and wanted to teach me the right way to do things. So, number one, I wouldn't get hurt. And number two, so I was confident in what I was doing. And so, as you're learning out there, I encourage everybody, always, and especially for Marvin, in your case, where this technician works for that company, what I used to do is when vendors would come in to support a piece of equipment, what I would do is I would ask that vendor a bunch of different questions. And so that we could, because I'd go, hey, why is this happening, and how did you fix it? And they'd walk me through the process, because for them it was kind of like, hey, if you could take this couple minutes and go through this process and fix the problem and get up and running, That actually makes my company look good because it's constantly running, and so they didn't have a problem with that. But that's one of the things I've always done in any job I've had, is I've always looked to somebody that has more knowledge, and I've asked them the questions. And I keep learning more and more every day, and that's just my nature. So I would encourage technicians out there, as you're going through this process, tend to be, I'd say, a little bit annoying in kind of looking over, hey, how did you do that? Especially when you're working for a company and you've got somebody like a Rob or a Marvin or a Chris that's going to teach you. Look over their shoulders. Don't just take everything for granted that if you run into a problem, you're going to be able to call your boss or whoever owns the company to come in and save your bacon. Prepare yourself. Actually act like you want to learn, and actually learn the stuff so that you become a better, more competent tech. That's going to help you in not only this business, any other business you would go into, or any other job that you would have down the road. It's going to serve you well having that type of mentality. So I encourage everybody to do those types of things. We've had wow, this has been a great show. Great show. I think we're going to save our topic for next time, and we'll get into that. But Rob, if people want to find out more about what you're up to, and how could they get a hold of you?
I'd say probably hit me up on the BusyBench email. I'm pretty much only reading that guy nowadays. So robert@busybench.com.
Cool. And we'll definitely have that link in there. Appreciate you coming on the show and sharing. Again, lots of knowledge. Definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Marvin Bee, where can people find out more about what you're up to?
You can find my website at mbsystems.net, or if you like to go to maninthevan.net, both of those will get you to the right place. And my phone number, my email, hit me there.
All right, cool, man. Appreciate you coming out and, again, sharing your knowledge, especially since we had an email that was pointed straight at you. But it brought out a lot of good things that I think a lot of people, it'll give people something to think about. So definitely appreciate your insight into that whole topic. And Mr. Chris,
Yes,
no
sir.
camera, where can people find out more about what you're up to?
On video. So we are a remote support tech team, white label IT services. You can reach us over the phone at 866-568-2813. You can email us at info@rstechteam.com, or you can subscribe to our newsletter if you want to keep up with what we're doing, which the link is in the show notes, I believe.
Awesome. Appreciate you coming out again and obviously sharing your great, vast amount of knowledge in what you do. All right. So let's see. Mark your calendars. Toronto On Convention is July 22nd through the 24th, 2016. Yes, it's in Toronto, Canada. So get your passports, your enhanced driver IDs, and all that kind of stuff ready. And tickets should be coming on sale soon. We're going to have a lot of good information there as we're putting stuff together. So definitely want to see you guys there. Plus, you get to hang out with cool guys like Marvin and Chris.
Yeah. like whatever. It's okay. Everybody wants to see Marvin. It's fine.
We love Marvin. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2 is there is no show next Sunday. I didn't realize this until I asked my wife. Next Sunday is Easter. So I want everybody to take the weekend, go enjoy that time with your family, go to church, whatever it is you do, and we're going to take the week off, and then we'll come back in a new month, and we'll be raring and ready to go. Other than that, you can come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/Computer Repair Podcast Live. I know it's a mouthful, but I'm sure you guys can figure it out. Join in on the conversation by calling in live and hanging out in the chat room. We have audio available over at podnutz.com, or subscribe using your favorite podcatcher. You guys can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Computer Repair Podcast. 3 simple words. Send your questions and feedback to podnutz@podnutz.com, or you can leave a voicemail at 1-888-697-0162. The same number we have for live calling. So if you guys want to be here on a Sunday, come join us on a Sunday, and you can call in and be part of the conversation. You can ask your questions, whatever it is you want to do. And I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. You guys can also support this show by going to patreon.com/Computer Repair Podcast. I appreciate everybody that is supporting this show. definitely helps out a lot. And I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast.
Yay.
All right, we're still on the air. We'll take probably about 10 minutes here. Good show, everyone. Sorry, Chris, we didn't get to your topic. We'll have to hit that up next time.
So,
You
Jeff,
never need to apologize for me for having too much good content, sir.
would you like us to keep our responses a little bit shorter so we can attack the main?
Oh, no.
No, we're okay.
No.
You know what?
Look, when we came up with the main topic, the reason why we came up with the main topic was in case we didn't have enough stuff to talk about from the user input. Because that's what we want, right? We want the listeners to send us emails and call in and all of that.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
I love the natural flow of how this actually works, where you kind of get these emails that will get you into deep subjects, and hopefully what it is, we're answering people's questions, and it's going to help. You know, if one person has a question, I always feel that there's hundreds of other people that have that same question.
Oh yeah, just the squeaky wheel scenario.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So hopefully that helps a lot of people out there, because this is what we do. You know, Marvin, you hit the nail on the head. We actually give away free information so that you can grow your own business.
Yeah.
It's going to be our new tagline.
Hey,
Free
Marvin,
information to grow your own business.
since you're doing enterprise stuff, did you hear? And this totally has nothing to do with anything. Did you hear that Microsoft is now releasing SQL for Linux?
Yes.
I literally screamed like a little girl. I was so excited. That seems so silly, but the amount of flexibility that adds to enterprise support you're literally openly saying, all Apple operating systems can run on any Intel hardware natively. It's like saying that. It's phenomenal.
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that, because I actually got a couple of emails where somebody had sent me, okay, so Windows 10 has a Linux-style package manager named OneGit. That's the, there's several things that they're going to start to do where they're gonna integrate Linux. So
Did you see what they were offering as far as licensing? If you switch from Oracle to a Microsoft SQL database managed on Linux, they give you your licenses for free.
What?
They're going after that entire market like crazy. Like that's such a shuffle. Like when this started going down, I was like, what is happening right now? It's crazy. That's like oh yeah, we'll give you like $4,000 in licensing. Here you go. Cool. Just come try out Microsoft.
yeah.
Wow.
So cool. Because I don't know if you guys do a lot of stuff with Synology or those NASs. Is sometimes like we have customers, like for example, we did one where they had an SQL database on an old 2003 server, and the only thing they used, and it was super antiquated software, and all they used the server for was file sharing. And so when they pitched, they basically asked us for a bid to do a new server, and we said, well, it's going to be a few $1,000s to get what you had before, or you can do a NAS and just throw that thing on a workstation and install SQL Database Manager. And that week they had mentioned that they're switching Microsoft to or allowing SQL to run on Linux-based operating systems, which then allows for Dockers and all this other stuff. So you can, instead of spending $10,000 on a server, you can spend $1,500 on a NAS and load up all your software. Like that's amazing, especially for small business.
Yeah,
let me tell you something too, that there are a lot of tech companies that can take advantage of that in their own systems.
That's a good point. Absolutely.
Like Enable, which is what we use for our managed service plan stuff. We have a lot of reporting that we do, but we don't have a reporting server, so we don't have nearly as much history. Other than what we save in our own tickets. So if we had an SQL server running on Linux, that would be a really affordable way for us to set up the reporting server and give us like up to 10 years of data.
That's a good point. I didn't really think about that. That would, for us, I was thinking of more the customer, but man, that does open up so many doorways as far as what can be done in house with free. That's a good point.
And also remember, on the topic of NAS, that all of the NAS companies, Synology, Netgear, they're building in so much in their NAS with their apps that it is going to be basically for smaller businesses. They're not going to need full-fledged tower servers or rack servers. That 75% of what they need can be done with a NAS. They'll just need us to simply make sure they put in the proper hard drives inside of a NAS, as opposed to the ones that come with the desktop drives or whatever. We need to put in server or NAS rated hard drives in it for the amount of pounding that they'll take. But a lot of these things with cloud-based applications, they're building them right into the NAS.
I think that's what's kind of happening to Microsoft, is they're noticing that it's kind of a paradigm shift. When you're doing enterprise support, I've been doing business, small business, medium for quite a few years, and I've noticed what it was 3 years ago is nowhere near what it is now. I mean, one of the bigger clients we picked up last month. You walk in and they already are switched over to Google Apps for Business, and they've already got Office 365, and they are on the back end of using Active Directory, and they're getting rid of that because everyone has their own machines and they don't need it. And and it's just, I think if you're in a really big company, like a giant call center, those things are still required. But for most small to mid-sized businesses, I think it's getting kind of pushed out because you don't need, like you were saying, the Google generation. A lot of it's not just the in-house techs, but a lot of the employees are doing the same thing. I've got multiple places where you've got sales reps that are fixing like switch problems and stuff like that. And you're like, where did you find this? Oh, I watched a video on YouTube. Like, okay, cool. And so I think what's happening is it's getting more and more to where it's finally easier to run a business with these super advanced tools because they're becoming more and more polished. I mean, QNAP offers virtualization. You can buy a NAS and throw an Active Directory server on it. I mean, it's crazy. Like you can do, and we're not talking hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to launch an enterprise level network. We're talking under 10 grand.
Well, what do you need for Active Directory? I mean, what type of business actually needs to have Active Directory in this day and age if everybody is basically either on their own workstation or bringing their own computer to work?
Well, I see Active Directory as it's a couple different things. For one, the number one reason is going to be policy control, right? So you can say, okay, this person can't get into that share, this person can't do that, they're not allowed to do this. The main reason that I typically see Active Directory being used is for roaming profiles. So you can have a bunch of thin clients or an RD server and a file server, and you can walk around the business and log in. To whatever profile, it pulls your profile, you're there, you're at that workstation, that's great. That's the main thing I've seen it used for, other than managing remote desktop connections. I mean, if you can, those little thin clients are $150. You throw them on a network and you have one Active Directory machine managing your domain controller, your DNS, and your Active Directory. You've basically got one workstation with a bunch of headless units, and everyone dials into that. You've got one point to back up, you've got one point to manage, and that's it. You're said and done. Like hospitals, for example. Hospitals, I could never imagine how that would function without Active Directory.
Right.
I couldn't even fathom the sheer IT headache that would cause. Oh, your chart's over on that computer. That it would never work. And for managing printers, for managing network assets, those types of things are very important. But outside of that, like the standard small business, I may be dumb here. I mean, I'm fine saying that I'm stupid, if I'm wrong, but I just don't see the purpose. Like, why does a 5-user company that everyone has a personal laptop they take home have Active Directory? Like, I just don't.
In those scenarios, you're right. There are networks where Active Directory is not needed at all. But for companies that want to have that control of the network in the sense of desktops, policies for printers, policies for shares, policies for software installation. There are a lot of things that you can do with Active Directory that you cannot do, by just using the permissions on a NAS box. NAS the NAS boxes now are coming with Active Directory and LDAP links, so
Yes.
you can utilize that. Microsoft is putting out the Azure, where you can manage Active Directory in the cloud, so you don't need an on-prem server to do Active Directory. So there will be that shift there, where Active Directory is still going to be needed for these networks that you do have to have control over, permissions and things of that nature. What's happening is BYOD is creating havoc for Active Directory, because Active Directory basically is for local area networks. It's you can't put Active Directory on a notebook that's across state.
I know.
Well,
But that's where Active Directory.
Don't be like, well, all you need is Hamachi.
Yeah.
oh no! Come on, hey, I'm not. I'm
But
not that bad.
Active Directory in the cloud will make that possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where
Yeah,
you can
I mean,
put-
as it stands right now, though, you can handle a lot of that stuff with a proper RMM tool. A lot of it's reactionary, which is the problem, though. You won't necessarily be able to stop them from installing it, but once it's seen that it's installed, it would be removed automatically. So I could see HIPAA compliancy being a really big thing if they start, trying to do the BYOD like some of the doctors that I know really want to do. Because
What do you mean? What do you mean want to do?
well, want to do because they don't want to get nailed for not being compliant, so they're not doing it now. But like,
I'm gonna have a choice here pretty soon.
well, and this is the thing is that if this Active Directory in the cloud starts reaching their ears, I know that I'm going to start getting calls from my doctor asking me to set all of that up because she wants the nurse to bring in her own laptop when they're doing the scales for the infants. Because she doesn't, for some reason, doctors don't like to spend money. I don't understand it.
I don't like the fact that when I walk into an establishment like a doctor's office and I see how their network's set up, it scares me that that's how most offices manage medical records.
Right.
Well, and I've said this before, is that if you look at things like HIPAA compliance, on average, most places are about 50%.
Oh, I know.
And there's a lot that are a lot lower than that, but on average, it's about 50%. Really, who's at 100% on HIPAA compliance or FINRA or all these other, whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, it is nuts because and they don't think about it from that standpoint because they don't know. And also, there's a lot of technicians that don't know what type of information shouldn't be out there. We can go back to the 90s, where I remember when you would do a mortgage application, there were mortgage companies that were not shredding the documents that you were signing and had your social security number, and they were just putting them out in garbage bags in the dumpster.
What?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
true.
this happened years ago.
That's very true.
It happened all the time because they weren't really thinking about it from a standpoint of, oh, what if somebody gets this information? Now, I'm at the point where I shred my documents here into little tiny pieces to put them out in my garbage that I shove down with a bunch of food and other things, so that the chances are nobody's going to dig through that to find that information.
And I don't blame you. I mean, we have a recycling company, and they were supposed to be. They come by once a week and they pick up all of our drives and our broken parts and stuff. And I went out there one afternoon, and I think the problem is, I think it's personnel with all of these. Like, you've got doctors' offices that are hiring, receptionists and stuff that have criminal records. You've got to remember that. Like you just handed your social security number to someone who went to prison for fraud. Like,
right.
That's people tend to forget that. And so we went out to this recycling company because I was picking up. I can't remember. I was looking for just a junk server to host Counter-Strike on for the weekend. And I went out there, and he had a flash drive around his neck, and he plugged it in, and I went, what do you got there? He goes, oh, it's something for diagnostics, and it loads up, and it's our bootloader because we wrote our own Grub for DOS bootloader. It's got all of our tools, and it launches ISOs and stuff. And I went, where'd you get that? He's like, I think you guys recycled it. And I went, yeah, we recycled it because it was supposed to be erased. Like, you're not supposed to go through our drives and go.
Oh, wow.
So immediately I was like, I called the shop, and not another drive goes to them. Not another information, nothing. Like, they are supposed to be, and we wrote in our contract with them that they are not supposed to look at any data. They're supposed to DoD wipe all the drives they get from us. Like, we have huge clients. Like, we work with Asante and the hospitals. We've got a dozen financial institutions, and that was 3 years ago. And so we have a bin in our back of our store that's got every single hard drive that's ever come out of a failed machine that we will go through and personally wipe when we get a weekend or two. But no drives leave the store, and no one touches anything that stores media, because it's. Could you imagine being the company that said, "Oh well, we thought they were recycling it, and now one of those financial institutions that we cloned a drive to, well, now 5,000 Social Security numbers are out on that."
Right.
Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? And so I was, and that was part of the agreement was, yeah, you're supposed to wipe everything, but they get the personnel there that was hired is being overwhelmed by the boss to get this stuff done quicker, and a DoD wipe can take 2 hours per drive. So they go, well, we'll quick format it, reinstall it on another machine, and you're good to go. You know? And
Hey,
so
Rob.
I'm just like, absolutely not. Are you freaking crazy? Like, no, you don't get no. And then they complained at one point. They said, well, how come every computer you recycle doesn't have a hard drive? Even the laptops don't have hard drives. And I went, let's not have that conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Rob, you need yourself one of these SysStore.
I know. I've been looking at those.
They are. I broke down and got it. Now I wish I got a bigger one because I want to do more drives.
Just sit and sterilize a dozen drives at the same time.
Yep, it's nice.
You know, and it's pathetic. I mean, there's so many technicians out there that don't take even the slightest peek at security, and they don't care, and they just walk. Oh, they'll be fine. They're not a big enough threat. Well, I'm not sure if you've looked at the lawsuits filed against some of these IT companies, but not only will you be no longer in business, but you won't be able to live comfortably ever again. Like, they're one of our financial institutions that we manage, basically, and we do everything. We do BitLocker on everything. The techs have to have fingerprints before they go on site. Like, it's pretty crazy. They specifically, like, they sat down with me and had a meeting and said, if I get a data breach, and this is nothing personal, I know you're doing a good job, the minimum we're suing you for is $1.5 million. And that is a real number. And a lot of people, even these small brokerages and these small, pediatric offices and stuff, that's big money. That's money you'll never pay off in the rest of your life, because these data breaches are massive. And there is insurances and stuff out there for that. Like we have because of BusyBench and stuff like that, we've got digital, breach insurance and stuff like that. But
I mean, insurance, is only going to cover it if you did everything. And so if you've been handing your hard drives to somebody that says that they're going to wipe it, and then they find out through investigation that they haven't wiped a drive in 2 years, they just do the quick format and send it out. Yeah. I mean, that's your fault for not checking up on that, and the insurance company won't pay out.
Exactly. It's a negligence thing. Like, if you can show that you're at least trying, that's great. That might get you down to about $750,000 in fines. But you're still gonna, And so we do our absolute due diligence and try it. But it shocked me. It's another company that's supposed to be doing their job, and I had this epiphany. I'm like, why did that surprise me? It shouldn't have surprised.
Here's a plug for one of my shows, but if you listen to show number 174, I had Morgan Wright, who's a cybersecurity expert, and he went through some numbers on there that will just boggle your mind. It was something like there was out of all the small businesses, basically, and I can't remember what the percentages were, but basically 5 million a year, 5 million small businesses every year will get hit with some sort of hack somehow, or somebody gets their information, and in something, there's a certain percentage that only makes like $25,000 a year. That's a lot of small businesses.
That's a lot. That's like pretty much everyone in my small town.
So, well, in a way, here's the thing though. They said, but most of the time when it goes to litigation, the litigation usually on the low end is like 38,000. So that will put over 3.5 million businesses out of business every year. Every year. That's why I was like, wow. So it is serious, and I think a lot of people just don't have the knowledge, or don't want to learn the knowledge, or kind of bury your head in the sand. And I look at things, and especially when it comes to HIPAA and stuff like that, it's like I don't really like doing a lot of medical offices at all.
They're scary. There's
because you walk, like you said, you walk in these facilities and you go, this really should not be set up this way.
Oh yeah, it's scary. I mean, I know some of the staff. Like one of the staff for one of these offices that I was working with, she just got out of jail, Like, she told me, like, we were sitting there, I was working on her computer, she's like, yeah, I got out of jail. And I'm like, how did you get a job? And she's like, oh, they don't do background checks. I was like, what the hell? What are you kidding? I was like, and so then I talked to her.
I do background checks.
I'm fixing, I can't remember, it was a printer or something, and I was like, so just out of curiosity, what did you go to jail for? She goes, oh, for fraud. And I went, oh, that's wonderful.
Wow.
You know, and so it makes me almost paranoid. So I mean, I'm to the point to where I do very little on almost anything personal. I make sure that there's absolute password security everywhere. Like,
right.
I'm literally, oh, am I on a VPN? Should I not be on a VPN? You know, it's brutal because you once the more and more you know, the more and more you become this scared cat, and you're just
right.
like, I don't want to touch anything because someone might steal something.
Right. Hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop the official live broadcast. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us, kind of the after show, and hearing some of the good back and forth that we have. But we'll see you not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that. And you guys have a great next couple of weeks. See ya.